So far, Marvel Phase 4 has been a boring, unfocused mess that is not enjoyable to watch at all. And while previous phases have had multiple movies that were high points for the phase, this phase has only had one, despite the fact that it's longer than all three of the previous phases put together, when you combine all the TV shows and everything. This franchise does not seem to be doing super well right now, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Right now, I'm gonna rank every single MCU phase from the worst to the best. And obviously, last place is gonna be Phase 4. Since the launch of Disney+, Disney wants Marvel to give them a ton more content than they were giving them before. They want to have like 10 shows a year and like 50 movies that they can put on there so that they can attract more viewers and just build a bigger backlog of content. And while that might be good for all the people up top making a whole bunch of money off this crap, the content has greatly suffered because of it, and that's what we saw in Phase 4. They're trying to release way too much stuff way too fast, and the quality is suffering a lot because they're pulling resources away from a lot of the bigger movies and giving them to a lot of these side TV shows. So less work and thought is being put into the stuff that we're seeing in theaters now, and you can tell. We began Phase 4 with a somewhat interesting TV show that just evolved into generic MCU crap, and then we got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, probably one of the worst things Marvel's ever released. Just a boring attempt to do a TV show version of the Winter Soldier that was way too focused on its message and made me less excited for Sam to become the new Captain America. And then Loki was pretty interesting, but then it ended with a finale that consisted of people just sitting in a room talking to each other. Most of these TV shows start off with a somewhat interesting concept, but then they don't know how to format them, so they sort of meander in the middle and then they rush the finale, leading to most of these shows just feeling like they were wasted potential. And then most of these movies were just outright bad. I mean, we began with Black Widow, which was like an okay movie, but it couldn't justify its own existence. Nobody cared about what was happening to Natasha at this point in the MCU timeline. So it just felt very insignificant, and then also the villain sucked, and it didn't really make you like Black Widow anymore, right? I'd rather watch her in all the Avengers movies because she's way better of a character there. And then Shang-Chi was just your boring, average Marvel movie origin story with some interesting karate fight scenes, but besides that, it was pretty forgettable. And then Eternals, the worst movie in the MCU in my opinion. You can't take an unexperienced director who's only done a few indie films and then give her a $200 million blockbuster and expect it to come out like Avengers Endgame, okay? Not trying to be rude to her or anything, but with Kevin Feige having to oversee so many projects now, it's clear that he's not recruiting people as well as he used to. And then of course you got Spider-Man No Way Home, the only good movie in Phase 4, a movie that was literally fail-proof, right? You can't bring back all three Spider-Men and not have a success, so I don't really count this as a point towards Phase 4. And then you got Doctor Strange Mom, a forgettable sequel to a movie that nobody cared about and about a character that people only like in the team-up movies. I haven't liked either of Doctor Strange's movies so far, and I think that's because he's just not a very interesting character on his own. He's better when he's playing off other heroes, because I loved him in Infinity War, but not really here. And also all the Sam Raimi-isms that everyone was super excited about really got squashed here by the Marvel formula, so nothing that was supposed to make this movie good really happened. And then we got Thor Love and Blunder, a laughably bad movie that it's unimaginable that the same people who made Ragnarok made this. This movie has a somewhat interesting premise, but then ruins every single dramatic moment with a joke, and they aren't even funny most of the time. You watch it one time in the theater and you're like, oh, that was pretty funny, that was okay, and then you go back and watch it again and you're like, what? Screaming goats? These are all terrible. How is Taika Waititi stooping so low? So yeah, overall, Marvel's just not doing it for me these days, so Phase 4 is coming in last place, and I doubt She-Hulk and Black Panther Wakanda Forever are gonna change that. And then we got Phase 1, the good old days of the MCU. Simple, there weren't that many movies, and Marvel put a lot of work into them, and they were really fun, you know? They weren't as popular as they were now, but they were building towards the Avengers movie, and when that movie came, it was pretty awesome. And you can tell that they actually spent time on the visual effects, and the writing was good, okay? Something that we're definitely lacking now that we're in Phase 4. And then I think I'm gonna be going with Phase 2. I know some people think this is the best phase, but this is sort of dragged down by Thor the Dark World, which is pretty mediocre and forgettable, and then Avengers Age of Ultron, which is the worst Avengers movie, okay? I thought it was a pretty disappointing follow-up to Avengers, and the fact that this was the movie that they were building towards in Phase 2 is what drags it down a little bit for me. But we do have Captain America the Winter Soldier, which in my opinion is one of the best MCU movies. So there are some high points, there's some low points, right? Iron Man 3 wasn't that good in my opinion either. So we have some highs, we have some lows, but overall, I don't think it's quite as good as Phase 3, but it's definitely better than Phase 4. I'd rewatch any of these movies any day over pretty much any Phase 4 movie except for No Way Home. So I'm not saying this phase is bad, it's just compared to the epicness of Phase 3, I think this one pales in comparison. But of course, coming in place number 1 is of course going to be Phase 3. This is the best of what the MCU can give us. They can give us these big sweeping story arcs that end with these big epic war movies. And this is what the MCU looks like when it's doing well. They aren't releasing too many movies, but yet they still have like 3 coming out a year. So they can focus on the quality of the movies still, but they can also give us enough so that we feel like we're constantly in the world and we want to keep going back and visiting our characters. I pretty much loved every single movie in this phase. From Captain America Civil War all the way to Spider-Man Far From Home, I really enjoyed myself, and I can't say I had a bad theater experience, except for, of course, Captain Marvel. That movie was pretty awful and consisted of a terrible character arc for the main character. Her whole character arc in that movie is her literally just figuring out that she's awesome. She's like, oh, if I get rid of everyone else, then I'm awesome. That was her whole character arc. Doesn't make for a very likable hero. But besides Captain Marvel, I enjoyed every single movie, and this phase took a formula that was getting a little predictable and just completely flipped it on its head with Avengers Infinity War, which is probably still the best movie in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, and gave us the huge shock of all the heroes dying at the end, which is honestly one of the best cliffhangers that I've ever seen in like a big blockbuster movie. And then of course Endgame was one of the most satisfying and epic battles I've ever seen. As a film, maybe it wasn't quite as good as Infinity War, but it was awesome, and overall I just really enjoyed this phase. Going back and rewatching it, it also makes you really not like Phase 4 as much, because you're like, you guys used to do this. How come you're making all these awful movies now, you know? The contrast really makes Phase 4 look bad. Anyways, what's your ranking? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below, and also if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button, and I hope to see you back next time I make a video.